Welcome to QX Church. We are wrapping up our marriage vow series with it's kind of half lesson 4 and half kind of a bonus lesson or an appendix. We are talking about for as long as we both shall live, and then a few miscellaneous things that kind of go post vows. As long as we both shall live, it's a traditional until death do we part, as long as we both shall live. We're going to talk about it in terms of as long as we both shall live, rather than until death do we part. There are a couple of ways to look at this. A traditional way is that it's a promise to never get divorced. That no matter what happens, no matter how you behave, no matter how I behave, no matter what we do to each other or do with each other, happens to us or with us, or with or in family, or with or to kids, or however we approach things, that we promise that we're going to stay married, and we're going to stay married pretty much no matter what. Now, by this view, it's seen as a promise that even if all the other vows are broken, an agreed party promises to stay with the vow breaker. So that even if the loving goes away, the honoring goes away, the cherishing goes away, the having goes away, the holding goes away, even if the better or worse is the partner is intentionally giving themselves permission to be the worst, that in the sickness and the health, that a partner is bringing sickness with intentionality into the relationship. For richer or poorer, that a partner is behaving in ways that are willfully impoverishing the family. That the promise by the vow breaker, or the promise to the vow breaker, is the vow breaker will not lose their partner, no matter how many or how badly the vows are broken. And often over time, one, the other, or both may break any number of the vows. Very often in these kind of relationships, both of the vows are kind of more guidelines, suggestions, ideals, aspirational sort of things. And the only real vow that they have is to stay married. And any number of them may be broken, and they stay together anyway. And we've seen relationships like this. We've seen relationships that rise up so much to the level that there was a funeral for a husband at one time, and the wife's response to the funeral is, "Oh, thank God it's over." Now, in my personal perspective, I don't want my death to be a time of celebration for a wife. I don't want my death to be a time of celebration for my adult children. But by working on this, no matter how bad things get, you stay married. No matter how bad somebody is, you stay married. You know, they could be in prison for some horrific thing, but you stay married because that's just what you do. And we literally, seriously, have seen places where a spouse is relieved that the partner has died because now they're free. So there's toxic levels of this. Now, on the much more healthy level of this, of course, is you weather the ups and the downs of relationship. You weather people's humanity. You weather the things that people go through. You weather the simple fact that nobody's perfect and nobody's going to nail it 100% of the time. And you weather the fact that there's going to be seasons. That there's going to be seasons of life that are easier. There's going to be seasons of life that are harder. That people will have bad days, and sometimes they'll have bad weeks, and sometimes they'll have bad months, and possibly even a bad year. And that you will weather these seasons with them, and that you will weather the season staying married, even if both of you are doing it to each other. Now, another view on wedding vows is that it's a promise to keep all the vows. That it's a promise to love, it's a promise to honor, it's a promise to cherish. To keep all the vows, and that promise is forever binding. Now, in this view, the promise to love, honor, cherish, and the rest is a promise. I promise I will love you. I promise I will honor you. I promise I will cherish you. I promise that I will have you. I promise that I will hold you. I promise that I will stand by your side when better or worse comes against us, but I will be your better, I won't be your worse. I promise that I will stand by your side for richer or poorer, but I am also promising I will not willfully impoverish us. I promise to stand with you in sickness and in health, but I also promise that I will not willfully bring sickness into our relationship. and that I promise that I will keep our relationship in its proper place. I will treat my partner as a partner. I will treat our marriage as our primary relationship. And I will cleave with you, that I promise that it will never just be my way or the highway. It will be in our way. That I will always take into account your way. And we will build an our way together. And by this view, if these things are adequately done by both parties, the divorce is unlikely to ever enter the equation. There's a very high likelihood that outside events, outside variables and circumstances will likely not crash into the marriage hard enough, strong enough, and powerful enough to break a couple apart that is each individually and mutually dedicated to these vows. It does happen, but it takes a pretty severe set of circumstances in order for that to happen. Now, in this view, if the relationship is really in jeopardy, the solution is not to stay married anyway, to stay married no matter how badly we're relating to one another, to stay married no matter how badly we're treating each other, to stay married no matter what happens. The solution, under this view, is fix the relationship. And one simple way to fix the relationship, if the relationship is seriously in jeopardy, is you go back to the vows. It's a return to the vows. It's a return to we love one another. We honor one another. We cherish. We obey. We have. We hold. We forsake and put our relationship as the primary relationship. We treat each other as partners. We create new our ways. We stop with the my way and the your way, and we make an agreed upon our way. And that when you do that, then all of a sudden divorce is off the table again because the relationship is good. So the idea here is keep the deal or lose the deal. Keep the deal or lose the deal. Now, a consequence of the no divorce rule is the parties have permission to behave badly, even abusively, and the other person will stay anyway. One of the worst cases I personally heard of, but I wasn't a part of, was there was a married couple. They went to a church, and that church believed strongly in the no divorce rule. And there isn't a provision in the Bible, as far as their interpretation goes, for abuse. There wasn't a provision in the Bible, not just for abuse, but there wasn't a provision in the Bible for even attempted murder. Well, this husband was in prison for attempted murder. And he's about to get out of prison, and according to the laws of the state, if they're still married and they're not separated pending divorce, basically if there's not an intention to divorce, he has every legal right to come back. He has every legal right to be back in the house. He has every legal right to share bank accounts because they're still married. And so she went to the church and she went, well, what do I do in a case like this? And in this particular case, a pastoral council met to kind of discuss this issue. And what they determined theologically is that the Bible is silent on this. And it's not within, then, therefore, the list of things that is appropriate to get divorced over. So ultimately what they decided was that, well, because of the danger involved, even though Jesus doesn't give permission to divorce, that they as a church would give her permission to divorce because of the potential ramifications to the possibility that she could be murdered, but that she also would never be permitted to remarry. And that was the church decision. Now, this story doesn't come from the woman. This story comes from one of the pastors that was on that council. And he said that really never set right with him. But that was one of the consequences of their theology. Theology has real-world consequences. Now, one that I was personally involved with, I was working at the jail, and I was talking to a woman who was in jail for murder pending her trial. And she said that, she didn't know what her conviction would be, but she admitted that she killed her husband. And when I sort of suggested in the course of our conversation that, divorce might have been preferable to murder, just, as an option should this issue ever arise again in the future. And she said, well, she kind of thought so too, but she talked to her church, and her church said no divorce, except in the case of adultery, and want to know, had he committed adultery? And she says, well, not as far as she knows. I mean, maybe. And says, well, unless you have proof of adultery, that you can't divorce him. So they stayed married. And the level of animosity, the level of toxicity, the level of violence in their relationship escalated to the point where finally she just killed him. But her first choice was to divorce him, but her church said no. And that's really kind of as close as that issue has ever come to me, where the real world consequence of a theological view in that case cost someone their lives. Now, I learned some of this when I was in my college years. I was first learning about the no divorce rule, and I was first learning about domestic violence and all the issues related to that. And I was being taught that God says no divorce, and I was also being taught about all of the incidents of domestic violence. So roughly 11% of all marriage relationships have some measure of violence. It's about 1 in 9. And so 8 out of 9 are typically nonviolent, ordinary levels of conflict and fighting. And about 1 out of 9, things rise to the level of some significant level of violence. So we kind of shifted views a little bit. Did a lot of research which goes beyond the scope of this lesson. But so to look at some of the alternatives here. And one of the alternatives is the all vows view. The consequence of the all vows view is that breaking the deal may result in losing the deal. Now, if someone stops loving, if someone stops honoring, if someone stops cherishing, if someone stops having, if someone stops holding, it's basically a declaration that the deal is off. It's saying that, yes, there's this list of vows, I'm not going to keep them. Yeah, I'm not really in the mood for any more of this having, holding stuff, so I'm just not going to do it anymore. Yeah, I know we're still married. I know that's part of a marriage. I just don't feel like it anymore. Yeah, I know I should love you. I know I should cherish you, but, I don't want to. And the consequence of the all vows view basically says if you decide that you're not going to keep the deal, the other side isn't stuck in the deal. That if you cancel the deal by refusing to abide by your side, the other side's not obligated. Now, there's a couple of views connected to this. It's the contract view and the covenant view of marriage relationships. The contract view basically says that if you have a contract and one person breaches the contract, the other person is not obligated to continue to fulfill the contract that has already been breached. We can think of this very simply in an employment contract, where I go to work for you, you pay me the money you agreed to pay. And if you tell me that I'm not going to get paid anymore, I don't have to keep showing up to work. And likewise the other way around, if I tell you I'm not going to show up to work, you're not obligated to continue to pay me. And so it's kind of that basic idea. If you hire a contractor to come redo your kitchen and you contracted as part of the work and says, I don't really want to finish this project anymore, but I do expect to be paid for the project, we would say no. Then there's the covenant view of marriage, and there's two versions of the covenant view, because what a covenant actually is a broken covenant equals a declaration of war. And then there's the other covenant view that kind of gets tossed around that basically says anybody can do anything they want and they still get the benefit of the deal. And that's back to the no divorce rule. But historically, if you had a covenant and someone actively breaks a covenant breaking is a declaration of war with your covenant partner. And we do see a lot of that. If you see a lot of couples, and they're basically at war with one another within their marital relationship, and frankly, there's too much of that. And then when things go to a divorce level, what often happens is they're at war with one another in the course of the divorce. And unfortunately, the saddest part of it is when you start to see the children being used as weapons in this war. Personally, if it's going to go that far, I like the contract view. Look, just the deal's off, and let's negotiate where we stand now. Now, with the all vows view, that may give the other permission to leave the deal, since the deal is broken. Now, one possibility of leaving the deal is you're leaving the marriage. But it doesn't necessarily mean you leave the marriage when you're leaving the deal. It means the deal is off. Couple of solutions, one of which is, so we need to craft a new deal. That if this is going to be the deal, then we need to figure out a new deal. And you think about that just from a contract perspective. If you're doing you're the one doing the kitchen remodel, and the other person says, okay, I just found out that the bonus money that I was going to get that I was going to pay you for this kitchen isn't coming. So now I can't pay you $45,000 to do the dream kitchen. I only have $20,000. What can we still do? And you renegotiate based upon what you can still bring to the deal. Or if it's an employment thing, and you say, like, okay, well, I wanted to hire you to work with me full-time, and I was going to pay you $60,000 a year, but turns out I'm not budgeted for $60,000, I'm budgeted for $30,000. What can we do? And it might be that you can't do anything, and that's it. I can't work for you for $30,000. Or it might be, well, I could do $30,000 if we're doing 20 hours a week, and you can be flexible with my schedule, and that will allow me to be home with my family more. And so you can negotiate a new deal and decide what the new deal is. Now, what's not fair is if just one person changes the deal. I change the deal on you, but you still have to keep the deal with me. I'm only going to give you 20 hours, but you still have to pay me for 40. I still want my $45,000 kitchen, but I'm only going to give you $20,000 for it. And so that's not fair. A combined position, though, a combined blending the no divorce rule idea with the all vows idea, because the idea that as long as we both shall live till death do we part is one of the vows. A combined position is a promise to both keep all the vows and stay married. The and stay married part is in there because that's one of the vows. Or at least it's an implied vow in that till death do we part. That even if the other vows are broken, well, it's still on the list. Just because one vow got broken doesn't mean all of them are off the table necessarily. Now, by this model, divorce only happens if there is an exceptionally important reason to divorce. And if both are working to keep all the vows, divorce will be all but non-existent. Because your first option isn't looking at it, well, that's it, you're not keeping the vows, I'm out of here. That you first look, okay, the vows aren't being kept. Can we fix this? Let's fix this. We're missing some of the key vows. We're missing some of this marital relationship. Let's fix the relationship and let's weather the storm. Let's go through this season together as husband and wife. Weather the storm, not putting up with all of the vow breaking going on, but trying to build this thing and put it back together the way it's supposed to be. And if both are working to keep the vows, divorce will be all but non-existent. Stuff could still happen, but typically by this model, if there is a divorce, oddly enough, it is often the vow breaker that initiates it. It is often the vow breaker who asks for it. That either they're the ones filing for it, or at least they're the ones advising their partner that they want it. Because if someone is committed to that, I'm committed to trying to work this out. I'm committed to finding a way. That the one who's more committed to finding a way, who wants to keep the vows, who wants to stay together, and is doing it in a healthy way, is the one more likely to hold off on filing for divorce, while the one says, well, but I don't love you anymore. I don't honor you anymore. I don't want to cherish you anymore. I don't want to obey you anymore. I don't want to have you anymore. I don't want to hold you anymore. I want my way or the highway. I don't want to do things in a blended way anymore. I don't want to have to do any cleaving. I don't want to have to keep you as my primary. I'm out of here. And very often, it is the vow breaker that leaves under the blended one. Under the all vows rule, where if the vow is broken, I can leave, it's usually the one who is the aggrieved party who will file for the divorce. Because they don't want to put up with being mistreated. They don't want to put up with being abused. They don't want to put up with being neglected. They don't want to put up with being taken advantage of. But very often when you do that blended one where the aggrieved party will put up with stuff. The aggrieved party will try to weather the storm. The aggrieved party, so long as they hold out hope that there is a way to fix this, and I have a reasonable expectation that if we both commit to fixing this, that we can get through this, then it ends up flipping the other way, and it is the primary vow breaker that ends up being the one to initiate the breakup. Now here's a big test. Can you keep vows post-divorce? because a significant percentage of marriages end in divorce. So one of the things to think about is if you have a relationship history, how well do you do with your ex-boyfriends and ex-girlfriends? If you don't have a relationship history, how well do you think you could do with an ex-boyfriend, an ex-girlfriend, an ex-husband, an ex-wife? This is one of the ultimate tests. If you get divorced, can you keep the vows anyway? If you get divorced, can you keep the vows that apply to a relationship with an ex at a friend level and possibly co-parent level relationship with an ex? Now, there's a few reasons this is hugely important. The biggest one is if you have children together. You need to co-parent. If you have children together, you still need to be friendly enough to be able to raise your children, hopefully, at some level on the same page. And if you're not on the same page as far as your parenting philosophy goes, to at least be cooperative enough so you're not trying to tear the other one down. Another one is if you have assets that you need to divide up. If you war over everything, it's a very good way to make lawyers very rich. Now, even though I'm a lawyer, I would prefer not to get rich that way. But if you can be friendly about how you divide up your assets, if you can be friendly and fair about how you handle all of that, then at least as things split up, you're being a reasonable human being. And so there's a few reasons why this is so important. And another huge one to me is if in any future relationship, I would want to know, what can your new partner reasonably expect from you? What can your new partner reasonably expect from you? So if, say in my case, if I'm looking at getting involved with a divorced woman, and the divorced woman has toxic relationships with every single ex that she's ever had, then that implies that there's a very, very high likelihood that she and I will, in time, end up in a toxic relationship, whether we stay married or not. But if she has a decently respectful relationship with all of her exes, and she speaks reasonably well of them, then I can have a reasonable expectation that no matter what happens with us, whether we're in the relationship or the relationship ends, that she will probably treat me more or less the same way. And so some of this gets important if you have any intention of ever having a future relationship. And then a lot of this I also think matters in the relationship you have. How safe can you be? So if I'm known to love and I keep loving, to honor and I keep honoring, to cherish and I keep cherishing, then anyone I have a relationship with can feel safe knowing that once I'm loving, honoring, and cherishing them, whether I'm doing it as a friend or I'm doing it as a prospect, or I'm doing it as a romantic relationship, or I'm doing it as a spouse, that they can have a reasonable expectation that this will never go away. If, on the other hand, they hear me say so many bad things about an ex, or worse, if they knew me when I was married, or if they knew me when I was seriously dating, and they hear me say bad things about the woman that's supposed to be my partner, and that they were friends with me during that time, then they have a reasonable expectation that I'm probably going to be talking about them that way too. So can you keep your vows post-divorce? Can you love, honor, and cherish an ex? The having will go away because that's not appropriate with an ex, but the holding will be limited, may be gone. It'll be somewhere where whatever a friend level is that is appropriate for this particular relationship. But the relationship still has a proper place. Now, when you say forsaking all others, you're declaring the proper place of this relationship, of my husband-wife relationship, is the number one relationship. All other relationships are secondary or less. But once you're divorced, once you're broken up, the relationship still has a proper place. It's not forsaking all others. You're number one. No one else is allowed to be more than number two. But there is a place, and whatever that place is, it stays in that place. No one bumps you from that place. And one of the stories about that is just with a friendship. That I met this couple while they were dating one another, and they were very serious, and then subsequently they broke up. And I was still friends with both of them. but I was advised by the woman when she and I met for dinner and we visited for a little while that it might be a good idea to not mention to the man that she and I had dinner and that we're still friends, because he will blacklist you and he will try to lock you out of the community. And my word was, well, look, our relationship has a proper place. I mean, basically, I'm talking this principle. No one else gets to tell me the relationship I have with you. So if he's going to serve an ultimatum, that's going to be his problem. Well, subsequently, before I saw him, someone else who's part of that community said, like, oh, you better not tell him that, you're still friends with his ex, because he will stop being your friend and you will lose your entry into this community. He will make sure you're not invited to any of these things again. And I told the woman the same thing. It's like, well, that will be a problem with he and I. I'm not going to end friendships because someone else wants to tell me who I can be friends with. And why is that? It's this idea. Every relationship has a proper place. No one tells me who I can and can't be friends with. The person I'm friends with can tell me if I can be friends with them. So if the woman said, look, I can't be friends with you anymore, well, that's up to her. But it's not up to him to tell me I can't be friends with her, because this relationship has a proper place. Just like it's not up to anyone else to tell me the relationship I have with my wife. And just like it's not up to anyone else to bump a relationship out of its proper place, period. And incidentally, if you want to know how that story ended, I did have dinner with the guy. And he was very relaxed, very friendly, and he knew I was still friends with the woman and spoke well of her in my presence. And he and I continued to be friends. And I don't know if it's that someone told him that, if you want to play this game with Scott, it's not going to fly, and you will lose him as a friend, and he doesn't care, because he likes you as a friend, but you don't get to tell a friend who they can be friends with. I don't know if anyone told him that or not, or if just he knew me well enough to know that doesn't fly with me. So friendships have proper places. And so that would also mean, say if I have an ex and we're still friends, and especially if there's co-parenting involved, and I get involved with someone else, but that relationship makes her feel insecure. She gets really jealous. She doesn't want me to talk to my ex except only when it has to do with the kids. No, she doesn't get to do that. That until my relationship with her rises up, that is not her place. Now, if she's my wife and she feels that the relationship with my ex is a threat to her primary relationship status, that's a separate discussion. But she still doesn't dictate that I don't co-parent with my ex. And in fact, that would become an issue on the possible way of getting married. Because my ex is a person in my life, and then we have kids together, and whatever the actual deal is in the reality, and that has to be part of the deal. That's part of the package deal going in. So as a relationship has a proper place, and there also should be some kind of an our way, some kind of a blending. It's not my way or the highway, it's not her way or the highway, or his way or the highway, depending which side of the relationship you're coming from. There's still some form of an our way. So here's a relationship principle in this. It's locked in or free to go. Locked in or free to go. Now some people like themselves and partners to be locked in. They like it when their partner can't leave. Locked into a relationship can be by a no divorce rule. That's one powerful way to do it. Obviously, it's so powerful that a couple stayed together even though they had a dangerously violent relationship. One woman didn't file for divorce even though her husband was in prison for attempting to murder her. So, this can be a very, very powerful way to keep a marital status intact, is just having the power of the no divorce rule. Locked into a relationship can also be by financial dependence, that you simply cannot afford to separate. You've got your finances entangled. Now, in particular, if there's one person who is the primary breadwinner, one person through whom most of the money comes or all of the money comes, and that the other person can't afford to survive financially without you, but you could, then that becomes a kind of a very power imbalanced way of keeping someone locked in. Now here's the thing, a lot of marriages are structured this way. And they're not structured that way in order to trap the person, they're structured that way in order to support the person. So it's very common in traditional society that the husband's the primary or sole breadwinner, then the wife stays home and she's a housewife and a stay-at-home mom. and that they structure it this way so that the kids have a parent at home with them. Now, the downside is if this is being done incident to a dysfunctional relationship, it also traps her. And one of the reasons a lot of the feminist side says, oh, no woman should ever stay home, she needs her own money, she needs her own income, is specifically to avoid the financial dependence. And there are ways you can structure, even if there's a sole breadwinner, so that you make her less dependent or financially independent, even though there's only one breadwinner. Sometimes you can be locked in a relationship by shared responsibilities. Common shared responsibilities is running a business together. Common shared responsibility is raising children together, where both of them are actively involved in the parenting. Codependence, though, when you start to get the less healthy ones, people get involved in a codependent relationship where you need someone to facilitate your bad behavior, and so you really need the other person there, or you're stuck in the codependent of always rescuing, always saving, and you're really unhealthy and sometimes stupid saving or covering or over-helping. So sometimes people get themselves trapped in codependence. Abuser-victim is one. Sometimes people get locked in an abuser-victim relationship. We used to call it battered wife syndrome, but we kind of recognize more now that the battering kind of goes both ways. There's been some statistical analyses and some irony connected to it, or contradiction connected to it, where instead as we found that in 11% of marriage relationships, violence is part of the relationship. And what they found is that men initiate violence against their wives about half of the time. And wives initiate the violence against their husbands the other half of the time. That both sides started about in equal numbers, and just how bizarre that is. So sometimes the abuser-victim thing goes back and forth because both sides want a target. Both sides want somebody that they can abuse, someone that they can be mean to, that will put up with being abused. Sometimes you have the abuser-victim where you have the learned helplessness. That someone's been so battered, so beaten down psychologically that they can't emotionally make their way to leaving. That they're so accustomed to be taken advantage of that they feel worthless and they feel like, well, no one else will have me. And at least she's paying attention to me. At least he's paying attention to me. And then a big one is someone who will be punished for leaving. That there'll be some bad negative consequence if they try to leave and they're stuck. They're scared to leave because something bad will happen. And these are some, unfortunately, far too common versions of being locked in that we see. Now think about the being locked in thing of what does that mean? So there was a marriage relationship and things weren't really going well. It might have, hopefully, I think, just been a bad season. He was going through some particularly challenging times in his own life, and she was, for a season, the primary breadwinner, and she was a very, very attractive woman. They were on their way to the car at one point, and this guy was wandering by. He looked at her and was like, wow, you're gorgeous. And then he continued on his way. So it's not like he's trying to hit on her. He just took note of how attractive she looked, and off she goes. She took it as a compliment. Because he obviously wasn't hitting on her. It was just a remark, and off he goes. Well, the husband got up out of the driver's side. He goes running, chasing the guy down, gets in his face, like, she's a married woman, don't you dare, and starts screaming at him, and she's like, oh, dear Lord. And then they got in the car, and he's going, you wouldn't leave me for him, would you? You're not going to dump me and go with him. Or, she didn't even know who he was. But she told him, look, I'm a Christian woman. I promise till death do we part. I am not leaving you because I made a vow to God. Now, nowhere in this conversation was, I love you. Nowhere in this conversation is, I honor you as my husband. Nowhere in this conversation is our relationship. All of it was, I made a promise to God to put up with your crap. And that was the theme of the whole talk. And he felt much better because, okay, my wife's not leaving me. I felt much worse when that information is now in my office because I'm thinking, okay, so your relationship is so bad that the only reason you still have a marital status is because you're using the no divorce rule. And there was no mention that she still loves him. No mention that she has any respect for him. No mention of anything about their relationship having anything to do with staying together. And so, of course, my objective there is, okay, we don't preserve the marital status with the, I'm fed up with you, I hate you, I want out, and if only I didn't make this promise to God, I'd be gone. But rather to try to, like, can we build this relationship so that you guys are actually kind of, interested in being together apart from you're not allowed to leave. Now, some prefer, and this is my personal preference, some prefer that each is free to go, that each one is allowed to leave. This means there's no rule forcing being together, that I could leave, you could leave. The couple is financially able to split. The responsibilities are structured so they could be handled apart. And they have a healthy and positive relationship. Now, in this way, they each know the other is staying by choice. They're staying because of love. So even if there's a sole breadwinner, if say, I'm earning the money, but stuff is in your name as your separate property. So if you decided to leave, you get to leave with the house and the car, and you get the equity in the house, and that there's an account in your name, and your name only. I can't get access to it. So at any time you chose, you could leave, and you're financially able to leave. And if you could leave and you choose to stay, why are you here? Because of us. You're here because you love me, because you're committed to me, because we're doing this thing. And across the entire spectrum, if you craft your life so your partner's not trapped. There's no trap. There's no lock on the door. It's not a prison. That this is a place you voluntarily come to connect and to love. And that's really how you got to marriage, isn't it? That when you first went out on a date, neither one of you were trapped. Either one of you could have left. Either one of you could have gone home. Either one of you could have just not gone forward with the relationship. When you're in a much more serious dating relationship, what does it take to break up from a romance and say, this isn't really working out? And yet you kept moving forward. But then at some point, a lot of people just want to know the other one's trapped. The other one's stuck. The other one can't escape anymore. That there's now a lock on the relationship status and there's no way out. And I'm more in the free-to-go category myself. Some people are firmly in the locked-in category. And most people are probably somewhere in between. Now, into this mix, on the keep the deal or lose the deal, I want to talk about that for a little while. I had to watch my time to see if I thought I would be okay on time. I want to mention this, is especially in religious circles, we see the ultimate betrayal is adultery. And the reason we see that is because the Bible seems to imply that the only possible reasons to end a relationship is abandonment, that the other person left and they're not coming back, and more specifically abandonment by an unbeliever, or adultery. Well, here gets to be an interesting thing. Statistically speaking, about 80% of people, about 2 years out from ending a relationship due to an affair, regret having done so. Now, what seems to happen is, and a lot of this is based upon my own experience coaching and counseling into divorced couples, is that at the time the news comes out, there's that horrible sense of betrayal. And there's anger and there's hurt and all of that other stuff related to that. But what tends to happen over time, once you get some emotional distance from that, and now you're beginning to look at your future and your future possible relationships, and you're getting involved with somebody new, that then there's a different kind of reflection. And the common kind of reflection that about 4 out of 5 people run into is they realize, if I were to give a boyfriend or if I were to give a girlfriend the same deal I was giving my spouse, there'd really be no reason for them to move forward in the relationship. If I start dating and I start treating a new dating relationship at about the same level I was treating my partner, yeah, they'd break up with me. They'd leave. There would be no reason for them to stay. I can be kind of mean. I can be kind of neglectful. That I've had women sitting in my office say, you know what? I'm kind of realizing that whole not having sex with my husband thing for years, and then blaming him for the affair. If I do that for somebody new, that's probably not going to get me a good man, is it? Yeah, if I treat a girlfriend the same way I was treating my wife, yeah, she's probably not going to want to marry me. If I wait until we're married to do that, yeah, she'd probably want to leave me too, or have an affair. And what some of them begin to realize about 8 out of 10 times is that they were a contributor to the breakdown of the relationship. And that sometimes, some percentage of them, and I don't know what the overall numbers are, I can only tell you some of what happens in my office, is they begin to realize that, in at least a couple of the cases, that their partner's affair was an attempt to get some sense of fulfillment so they could stay, rather than just dump them and move on earlier. Because, I mean, that's one of the things, like, well, they should have just left me earlier. It's like, okay, so is that the deal you want to tell any future relationship? Is if you're not happy with me, just leave. If I behave this way, don't stay, leave. If you see anyone else you're interested in and I'm mistreating you, just leave. And I realized, so how often would you be left if that's the deal that you tell people? And a couple of them are going like, oh, actually, yeah, that may not work. Because what they realize is their relationship behaviors would drive these people away. Now, this, of course, doesn't mean that affairs are okay. I hope that's obvious. What it does mean is you look at both sides. As a lawyer, it's common in among divorce lawyers that we kind of know that is almost never the first vow broken. Almost never. At the very least, most of us have never seen it be the first vow broken. That typically what we see is something else has been broken first. Often a whole chain of things has been broken first. So keep that in mind. And build your relationship on purpose. Build your relationship on purpose. If you wait until you need to work on your relationship, there's a fair chance it's already too late. While you may feel highly motivated, if you know you're in trouble, if you know divorce has now been put on the table, if you know that separation is now put on the table, if you know this might be over, sometimes there's this desperation, this very, very high motivation to make changes. When there's problems and high emotions, though, it might be too late to make these changes. And here's another big one. Promises are sometimes made that can't be kept because people are desperate to stay married. People are desperate to be out of trouble. And they're sincere when they make the promise because they're desperate. And in that moment of desperation, they really believe, if only I make this promise, I can do this. Because they're so afraid of losing the marriage. And this happens at all levels of relationship status. I've had couples that I'm counseling into, and they're just dating. But they get this desperation when they realize they're losing their boyfriend or they're losing their girlfriend. They'll do anything to keep the relationship, except that they can't really do anything. They can't sustain it. It's out of character for them. It's beyond them. They're motivated. They really want to. When they make the promise, they really believe that they can. But they can't. The test will be the work that gets done when the risk seems to vanish. The test is when everything is reasonably safe. It may not be good, but there's no threat to the relationship. There's no threat to the status. There's no, this is it, I'm done, I'm ready to leave in the relationship. That's the test. What work is being done in that season? Are both people still working on themselves? Is the couple still working on their relationship? Or does this only arise when there's a crisis? And if it only arises when there's a crisis, there's honestly a fairly low probability that the promises made in times of crisis are always going to be kept when the pain is over. Now think about this just in terms of how almost everybody does almost everything. Is when you are in pain, you're highly motivated. But then when you get out of pain, how motivated are you? And most people don't stay as highly motivated when they're out of pain. So much so that there's some self-help gurus that specifically teach that you need to stay in pain, that you need to have what they call constructive discontent. That basically means you need to have, I'm fed up with my life here, I have to change it to that. And that they are essentially advocating a life of perpetual pain in order to create a life of perpetually moving forward. Or creating a life of musts, everything has to be a must. Of creating a life of constant stress to constantly move forward. And for a lot of people, this system really works for them, that they're comfortable living that lifestyle. But if you don't want things to just always be pain motivated, the big test is when there's no pain, how do you do? When you look in the mirror and go, oh my gosh, I'm so out of shape, I need to get in shape. Okay, when you get the body, what lifestyle do you continue to live? Do you continue to live a healthy and fit lifestyle? Or did you just get to the body you want and then go back? That's why 96% of all diets, 2 years or I think it's 2 years after the diet has started, even if it's successful, the person is 2 pounds heavier than they were when they began. And it's because they're desperate. I've known women who get desperate to be thin for the wedding day, or desperate to be thin because they feel they're losing their boyfriend. And then once they've got him, then they go back to their old eating habits and work their way back, and then they get desperate again. And it's this unhealthy yo-yo thing. And we see variations of it across the board. We see it in business, we see it in hunting for jobs, we see it in finances. This is a common human thing. And so none of us should be surprised if it shows up in our lives. So the test of commitment to the relationship is how are you working on the relationship when there's no threat to the relationship. Skill and vocabulary is like digging a well. Dig your well before you're thirsty, right? If you wait until you're thirsty and then you start digging your well, you're probably going to die of thirst. It's not time to try to have an intellectual discussion about death and dying when someone's in mourning. It's not time to have a principle level discussion about affairs and faithfulness when someone's reeling from it. It's hard to talk calmly about application of principles in the middle of emotional turmoil. That's why it's so important to build skills on purpose before there's trouble. Learn relationship skills on purpose before there's trouble. In fact, the more you know before you even have a relationship, the better off you are. There's a ton of things you can learn to make relationship like a martial art to you. Things you can keep improving on and master. I've been doing martial arts for 45 years. I'm not done. I don't know everything. And if you can treat your relationship skills, because that's where we find most of our fulfillment and most of our pain is in our relationships. Make that a study as well. Become a master of marital arts. Marital as in marriage. So you're writing that down. Martial is M-A-R-T-I-A-L. Marital is M-A-R-I-T-A-L. Become a master of marital arts. Whether you learn it for yourself or to coach others, get a vocabulary. And be ready to teach it to your children. There's a whole lot you can do. Even if all you do as you're learning stuff is you affirm that you're already doing great stuff. But now you have a useful vocabulary to talk about the great stuff you're doing so you can now teach it to others and in particular pass it on to your children. That allows you to, we talk about be a great example, explain the example you're being. And sometimes you can be a good example, but you can't really explain it because you don't have the vocabulary for it. All you can kind of do is show what you're doing. And sometimes that gets misinterpreted. So if you can explain what you're doing, if you develop the vocabulary, you develop the self-consistent principles in what you're doing, then you can be much better off when you're child rearing, when you're talking to friends, when you're sharing with other people, and you're coaching anybody, and especially, again, your kids. Expansive vocabulary and common frames of reference gives you endless entry points for useful conversation. And that's part of what a lot of it is how do you start a conversation? Well, you need places you can talk. If you have a concept of love languages, well, that's a place you can start a conversation. If you have a concept of personality types, that's a place you can start talking. If you have a concept of his needs, her needs, their needs, that's a place you can start talking. If you have a concept of the 6 universal needs, that's a place you can start talking. If you have concepts of masculine sexuality, feminine sexuality, you have concepts of masculinity and femininity, then those are places you can start conversations. Those are places you can look to as possible places you can do repair. If you know temporal modalities, sensory modalities, all of these things are part of the matrix that allows you an infinite number of combined entry points to have a useful conversation about your relationship. Just program-wise, we've taught dating by the book. The simple version of dating by the book is a sequence of friends, dates, dating, courting, engaged, married. And so for single people, or for anyone who is coaching or raising single people, that's a useful framework to work from. And a big key in there is what we call the 4th date protocol. And basically it's that somewhere in there, and if you've been going on dates, do it at least around the 4th date where you have a discussion about what this is and what this isn't. So that there's no misunderstanding. Because if one person thinks, oh, this is a serious dating relationship, and the other person thinks, no, this is just like friends going out. It's good to clarify that, because if someone asks the question, so are you two dating? That you have the same answer. And that you know where you stand with someone. I know one woman, she was seriously involved with a man for 1.5 years, and she didn't know where she stood with him. That they had never had this discussion. And then I knew a teenage couple, they did dating by the book, and on the 4th date, they had a 45-second conversation that established that they both mutually agreed that they were boyfriend-girlfriend in an exclusive relationship. So they both knew that the other one's not seeing anyone else, and they knew that they could call the other one a boyfriend or call the other one a girlfriend. I've had the 4th date protocol as early as the 1st date to make it clear that, this is a friend-friend thing. That, I'm aiming for your friend zone. I'm not aiming for your romance zone. I want to be your friend. And you're in my friend zone. And I'm not looking for a romance. I'm looking to just be good company while I enjoy good company. And, and I'll have a dinner, in fact, later on tonight with a young lady that we had that discussion on our 1st date. That this is friend to friend. That we have no intention of ever taking this to a romance. And if that intention were ever to change, then what do? You have another discussion about, just so you know, I'm beginning to feel a romantic interest. And you have the discussion. Now, it can be a scary discussion, but you have it. And that comes from dating by the book. Now, you can do the same thing if you're married. It's the same idea. Have the discussion about a shift in the relationship. Especially if children are showing up. Like, what is the shift in the relationship that's going to be? And how long do we expect for it to last? So part of it is, okay, we're going to have a newborn. What is that going to change? What is our deal going to be? And that unless we have a different discussion, because, we might be guessing, if we've never had a kid before, about what the future deal is going to be and when we might look at changing it back. And what we can build separately. Otherwise, sometimes you get first 2-year rules with babies, and those become the new normal in the marriage. And then as the kids get up, very often, husbands get furious at the relationship that they have left. Pre-courting. Pre-courting was an entire program that basically says lay out 2 fundamental things. One is, what are you looking for in a future relationship? What are you looking for? Now, a whole bunch of people do that. What do you want? But then here's the other thing. And what do you bring to the table? That's the other side. So what are you looking for? What do you bring? What do you want to be receiving? What do you have to give? And then you look to see, okay, is that a good matchup? That if this is what I bring, does someone who brings this, normal and natural as an ordinary consequence of bringing this to the table, receive and deserve to receive and to keep that? Very often what we find is there's a lot more I wants than there is I offers. That's very common. And when that's the case, like, okay, what personal growth do you need to be doing if you're committed to having what you want to have in order to be able to deserve it? Just like in a career, if I say, well, I want to make $100,000 a year. It's like, okay, well, what are your skill sets? Well, I've had 3 part-time jobs at fast food restaurants for minimum wage. Like, well, $100,000 a year job is a pretty big leap from a part-time minimum wage job. And so, well, what skills are you developing? And said, well, none. I just want that much money. You would see economically that would be patently unfair. And you can imagine if someone comes to you and says, well, just so you know, I'm a terrible boyfriend and I'll be a horrible husband. But I want this whole list from you and it looks like you could give it to me. You would say that would be hugely unfair, right? And hopefully you would look at something like that and go, oh, heck no. Well, of course, then we don't do it to somebody else. And so part of pre-courting is trying to resolve that. Then we have a values workshop, figure out what's important to you, positive and negative, what you want to avoid, what you want to move toward. And then don't walk into relationships that are going to violate your values. For sexual things, we have the talk, which is an introduction to sex. It's at a level that would be okay for teenagers. But also, if you've never gotten that much information on the subject, it's a good primer for the subject. And the program Awesome Sex, if you already have a pretty good grasp and you want to really step it up next level stuff. And then we have the entire Yori series of lessons. And Yori stands for You, Others, Relationship, Intimacy. And it deals with the Yori matrix, all of those things I mentioned before. And there's a whole set of tools for your toolbox. We have masculine sexuality, heroic masculinity, complete and unleashed, personal transformations, and so much more. And if you are a live attending member of this church and you come here, you have access to all of these for free. Now, admittedly, if you just watch by video or you listen by audio, you get charged. But for the people who are here and part of the family, you get it for free. Literally thousands of dollars of programs for free. And if you decide that, yes, I want to build my skills in these areas, it's here. And it's how much? It's free. Which sometimes honestly has been a problem because people who don't pay for something often don't value the thing because they're not paying for the thing. And they tend to treat it like it's worth less because they haven't paid anything. I get that. And so, there's no need to message me on that issue. But it's available because I want it available so that people can learn these things. So part of this is to follow your heart, but look with your brain. There's a lot of things that benefit from really thinking about it early and then talking about it. Talk about things. Remember that talking about things you've never experienced means you're really making best guess agreements. I was working with one young lady one time, and she was talking about parenting. Now, I have never had my own biological kids, but I've been working with children for literally decades, and it seemed like she didn't really have a grasp of what it took to raise a kid. And the diaper changes and the feeding and all of that. She had this abstract concept of baby in her head, and she wanted a baby. And that was because she was making best guess assumptions because she'd never been there, done that. And you have to understand that happens a lot. A man wanted to own his own home. Great thing, bought his own home. Had no idea how much time and effort and energy and expenses connected with owning your own home. He loved the idea of, I'm a homeowner, look at what I've got. And then the reality began to set in. And then he realized, okay, I need to do some things different to kind of keep this thing going here. And that's going to be true if you have people making marriage deals when you've never been married. You have people making parenting deals as co-parents when you've never parented before. It's best guess agreements, which means people are making agreements based upon their best guess assumptions. So it's easy to be swept up in the emotion of it all. And so just make sure you have your brain take a look too. Pre-solve problems. Pre-solve potential issues you might see in the future. Decide when you're going to have another conversation. And then have that conversation. To say, okay, is this working out the way we thought it would? And then have a discussion. Because sometimes we've seen things as simple, well, like with kids. When the kids, I promise I'll take care of the puppy all by myself. You won't have to do anything. And then you get the puppy, and for the first 3 days, the kid's taking care of the puppy, and then mom's feeding the dog, and dad's putting the water in and cleaning up after the dog, and the mom and dad are talking, and you realize this kid hasn't done anything for this puppy since the 3rd day. Well, when the kid made a promise, does that mean the kid was lying? No, it meant that the kid was promising out of total sincerity, but then couldn't deliver. And so then, you have another discussion. Okay, this is going to be new to this child, so then we'll plan a discussion at the end of the first week, and we'll see how it's going. Then we'll plan a discussion at the end of the first month and see how it's going. We'll plan a discussion 3 months in, 6 months in, a year in, and see how it's all going, and make any adjustments we might need to make. And if you know that going in, then the discussion time isn't a, well, you're in trouble, we need to talk, which is very often how these things come about. So pre-solve the thing. That's what pre-courting and courting are for. Before you get engaged, so that you can, and you can also do post-courting. You don't have to, but we're already married, it's too late for it. No, do post-courting. Just because you're married doesn't stop you from having the same discussions. In fact, it's highly recommended. Married couples should talk about stuff. And you can do a little bit of post-courting and say, okay, what is it that I want from my partner? What is it I deliver? And is this a balance? Now, very often, this is probably one of the most common things I see with reasonable people, is no one thing I ask for is at all unreasonable. I just have dozens of them, sometimes hundreds of them. That, all I want is, and it's just this tiny, reasonable little thing that'll take someone 2 minutes. But then I have hundreds of them. And it's the accumulation of them that makes it unreasonable. I want this done, I want it done perfectly with 0 mistakes. And sometimes it's the 0 mistakes that makes it unreasonable. Or I want you to be totally responsible for this thing that benefits me, and I don't want to have to do anything to lift a finger toward it. Can also make it unreasonable. And even just a simple thing on some legal work I've got going on, where someone asked if I could take a look at some documents. I'd already agreed to do that before. My response is, sure, I'd be happy to. If you haven't heard back from me by the end of the day on Sunday, message me in case I forgot. And so I'm not promising that I'm going to remember. Why? Because I know I have channels I need to change into. I've got class, because it came in on Friday. I have class to teach on Friday. I've got a demonstration I'm running on Saturday. I'm going to be at the fair. Then I'm prepping for Sunday. I have a message I'm teaching on Sunday. I might forget. Now, obviously, I didn't forget because I'm talking about it now. But I don't count on myself remembering. Now, she took the attitude, well, why should I have to message you? You said you would take care of it. I said, no, I'm willing to take care of it, but I don't promise I will remember. So I tell her, so if you haven't heard from me by Sunday evening, message me. Remind me. And when you remind me, then I'll make sure I get to it. And what I'll do is, if she had to remind me, I says, okay, yep, I will get to it. If you haven't heard from me by the end of the day tomorrow, message me again. Or if I want to borrow something, I take responsibility for what I want to borrow. So if someone's going to bring me a DVD the night before, sometime before, I will message them and let them know. It's like, oh, could you make sure you bring me the DVD? And because then if I forget and you forget, well, now we both forgot. I'm the one that wants it. I'm the one that should remember, right? Or I had a friend who was substituting for me, and he has a reputation of forgetting. And so a couple of hours before he was supposed to be at class to teach, I messaged him information. Now, part of it was, here's the information you need for the class. The other part was, here's your reminder that you promised to do this for me tonight, and I'm expecting you at 6. And as it worked out, he had totally forgotten. He looked at his calendar, and he said, oh my gosh, that's on my calendar. I'm supposed to be there. And he came straight away. And he did what he said he would do. But I didn't count on him remembering, and our relationship doesn't depend upon him remembering. It depends on him delivering once he's been reminded, but it doesn't depend on him remembering, because I know he's not going to remember. And because I know that's a possibility, I build in the responsibility on my side to make sure there's a reminder. If I get back a yes, sir, then I know that he either remembered or my reminder just reminded him that that was going on. And so it's the kind of that blend thing. Now, what if I just made him 100% responsible? Well, first off, I wouldn't have my sub. And then I'd be mad at him. And I would be making demands right into his weakness and basically saying, this weakness of yours has to not be a weakness anymore. And I won't do anything to compensate for this. It's all on you, mister. Well, I'm the one that wants the thing. If I'm the one that wants the thing, then I want to try to make sure I'm receiving what I want from someone who's perfectly willing and even happy to do it. He just needs a little bit of help. And so I give them the help so that I get what I need. Now, to wrap up, and this is really like an appendix item, we're talking about prenuptial agreements, particularly prenuptial agreements for complicated marriages. Now, our general rule is grown-ups get to make their own decisions, and that's our general rule. There's some caveats in here. One of the places that we always suggest extra consideration is where others are involved, children in particular. Because children can't make their own decisions. Children are subject to the decisions of their parents. A new relationship when there are children from prior relationships creates a new level of complication, even if the children are grown. And in some of these, you need to have the prenuptial agreements to preserve the relative estates. So if I have children, and I get married to a woman who also has children, and she shows up with a house and I show up with some money, and how do we make sure that we preserve the estates for our children now, especially if we're older and our children are all adults? So no one has to raise each other's children. All the children are adults. How is the estate going to be handled? Now, we had one case, I guess it was like a decade ago now, where the man of the house had a separate estate and already had the trust set up and all that, and he had to cash something out, and it was like a 3-day window where he needed to park it, and then it went back out into another account for his family. Well, because of that 3-day park was in a joint account. According to the law in the state of California, the fact that it went into a joint account for even just if it was in the joint account for 1 day, now makes that community property. So then when he put it back into a family estate account, back in the trust, when they closed one account and opened up another account, according to the law, he was stealing from the community. That what he needed was a written agreement, written and signed and notarized by his wife, that this money that just got put in the account is his own separate property. Or afterwards, we got put in the other account that is his own separate property for the estate for the benefit of his family. But, that's not the way that generation does things. They just go, we're husband and wife, we work together, of course we'll take care of one another. Well, what had happened, though, is she got dementia. So she wasn't making her own decisions. She had a conservator. Well, her conservator is under legal obligation to pursue all of her interests. And that doesn't take into account the husband, wife, of course, that's his stuff. That he is obligated to look out for her finance. So he actually sued to get that part of that money that should have been hers in the community property. And he lost almost 30% of his estate after he died. So that means his family lost 30% of their estate, 30% of their inheritance, which jeopardized real estate and jeopardized other things, because all of this money had to be paid out to the estate of the widow, the dementia widow, because the conservator sued. And had there been a written instrument, something along the lines of a prenuptial agreement, but some document that said what was happening with this money, that would have all been saved. And now, her heirs were thrilled that now they get this huge multi-$100,000 windfall. And, and his heirs are going, oh my gosh, now how are we going to pay for this real estate? How are we going to pay for the acreage? How are we going to pay for the farm? How are we going to pay for, because it drained the estate of all of the cash that he had there in order to make sure that those things were taken care of. So these are things you have to watch out for. And this is why you document things. When you have complicated marriages, you have children, especially children from multiple relationships, even just a child from a prior relationship, and you're just doing this even if it's just to preserve an estate, so that your children know that this it's not just going to get all mixed up together. That the thing that's been in the family for 3 generations is still going to be in this side of the family. Now, there's a significant difference in material assets. Prenuptial agreements are sometimes considered practical, but decidedly unromantic. When children and an eventual estate are a reality, prenuptial agreement should be automatic, so that you're preserving the relative estates, and that you set this up beforehand so that the families don't end up in war over money. This is to protect the children, to protect the minor children, to protect the adult children of each partner. And the more complicated the realities of the partnership, the more important it may be to define and pre-solve them in some sort of an official way. And that's part of the as long as we both shall live. Because there's a lot of things that happen that go beyond when we both shall live. And to take that into account as well. Which is, by way of reminder, I don't have a current will either. That I've had a shift in my estate. I haven't updated any estate documents. I need to do this. I'm the lawyer. You'd think I would have mine up to date. But part of this came up in the conversation where I've got 2 other things going on. One person came and told me that she wants to update her will, and then someone else said she wants to do a living will, which is instructions for medical stuff. And I've had a stepfather who was just in the hospital. I have a cousin who was just in the hospital on a separate matter. So there's lots of reminders that, this whole thing of planning out your estate as husband and wife. And, my stepfather, of course, is married to my mother. My cousin has a husband as well. And realizing, we need to make sure these estates are put together. And that's part of husband-wife. That's part of the partnership, of making sure that we have our partner taken care of, make sure we have our kids taken care of, make sure these things are pre-decided and handled. And that's part of partnership. So as long as we both shall live, we all get to decide how we're going to use that. We get to decide if we want to lock people in or if we want them to be free to go. If they're locked in, then we know that they're going to stay, so we can have some confidence and some security in that. But we also can wonder sometimes, are you here even though you want to leave? And you're only here because you have to be? Or you're only here because you're trapped? Is that why I have a relationship with you? Is you're trapped, you don't have a choice? Or if you're free to go, then I might feel less secure because then you could leave. But then I know if you're here, it's because you love me. It's because you want to be here. It's because you choose me. And you get to decide how you want to work that. You know my preferences, but my preferences are my preferences. They may not be your preferences. They don't have to be your preferences because grown-ups get to make their own decisions. And you can decide how you're going to work with that. But as long as we both shall live means that we're making these vows. I will love you whether we're together or not. I will honor you whether we're together or not. I will cherish you whether we are together or not. Whatever of the vows apply to our relationship, I will keep whether we are together or not. And I will do this as long as we both shall live. That's my recommendation. That's how I play. And that's my suggestion for others. But ultimately, of course, it's up to each one of us separately and individually. So I hope that this has been helpful, and I hope that the wedding vows help guide our behavior toward our spouse, and that we don't rely on them not being able to leave. Instead, we build a relationship both of us would love to stay in. And that we do it as Christians, we do it in Jesus' name, we do it before God and before men, so that when we take those vows when we get married, we really mean them. We mean all of them. Even though we know we're not going to be 100% perfect 100% of the time. We are going to blow it. We'll have bad days, maybe bad weeks, maybe even bad months, and possibly even a bad year. But that we'll be working on it. And when we blow it, where we blow it, we will not give ourselves permission to continually blow it and just expect the other person to put up with it. That we will seek out these vows and we will build a relationship that is worth staying in for the rest of our lives. Thank you very much.